Let's talk more about trade first, since that's kind of what we're expecting first, Jingyang. It seems like how sustainable this whole trade story is still the key question here. We've seen that China's been able to keep up with demand, but now with Omicron, is that likely to change?
Thank you for having me here, David and Yvonne. So yes, China's exports growth has been like the single largest growth driver for China's growth in 2021, but we think we may see some moderation from here. In fact, in December data, we see some small deceleration in both export and import growth. For export, the Omicron variant certainly already had an effect, some adverse impact on external demand. If you look at PMI data in the US and Europe has already shown some weakness. So this is going to affect China's export growth in December, we think. And another thing that we're watching out for is the unwinding of front loading, because US and Europe has already imported a tremendous amount of Chinese exports before the holiday season. So now we may see some unwinding of this front loading. This is also going to be some drag on China's exports of consumer goods. So for December data, we see export growth to slow to around 18%, which is also a touchdown below the consensus. For import growth, a lot of the strength in the recent months is really driven by the price effect. You have a rise in shipping cost, you have a surge in commodity price. So this has been contributing to China's import growth. But going forward, as we now see some slower commodity price inflation, we think this is also going to be a drag on China's import growth. And also for China's domestic demand, we are also seeing quite a lot of weakness there. So we also think import growth can also decelerate to 20-ish% today.
The consensus for growth for GDP next week, those numbers, we're still thinking that 2021 we can hit 8%, which I guess is not a huge surprise. I think for this year, though, it seems like the consensus is shifting away from really can China maintain 5% and now shifting towards can they actually stay above 4%. What's your take on that?
So 2022 year is going to be difficult, but it's also a very important year for China because we have the party congress later in the year. And usually before this kind of political events, Beijing will try its best to stabilize not only growth in real economy, but also growth in financial markets. So that's why in December in the Central Economic Work Conference, we have seen Beijing pivoting more to a pro-growth policy stance. So given that this year, in the new year, we have seen more challenges from a new surge of virus, and at the same time we continue to see a slowdown in property sector. So as a result, we think Beijing will move soon to deliver more policy easing to shore up growth. We actually already priced in a 10 basis point rate cut in the 1-year MLF rate published next Monday, and also we see LPR to go down with it. We think more fiscal and monetary easing can come in the coming months to make sure that China's growth can see a rebound to at least 5 to 6% before the Party Congress.
Jingyang, just hold that thought. We're getting some breaking lines. Our viewers are probably already seeing that. Let me just run through here some of President Biden's picks here for the Fed Board of Governors. You probably see some of those names, Cook, Jefferson, and also just to highlight there, Lisa Cook, Philip Jefferson, and also Sarah Bloom Raskin as the Fed's vice chair of supervision. So unless I'm missing any lines here, we're looking at 3 names so far. They're Lisa Cook, Philip Jefferson, and Sarah Bloom Raskin. Will obviously keep on top of this story. A lot of what happens here obviously affects really, well, in a lot of ways, the conversation around rates and not so much the path, because that seems to be fairly set. Let's bring you back in. Jingyang Chen, if you're still there, thank you for your patience. obviously the imminent risk of a slowdown, and you outlined that we might just get, of course, some steps out of the PBOC or the finance ministry soon. Talk to us about the COVID zero strategy and the expectation of HSBC. Do you think China maintains that policy throughout this year? Because if they do, that seems to suggest that consumption would not be able to recover just yet in 2022.
Yeah, so for us, we do believe that China's zero COVID strategy can continue to be in place for some time, at least to make sure that the Winter Olympics and the Party Congress can happen without any disruption. So pretty much most of this year, we will still see zero COVID strategy. But at the same time, we also notice some shift in China's approach to COVID, right? Like in last 2 years, China tend to implement a lot of like lockdowns to make sure there is zero local transmission. But now China is shifting to a strategy called the dynamic clearing. So basically, the regions hit by virus need to go through like massive testing and lockdown. But at the same time, for regions that haven't really been impacted by virus can still operate at a normal level. So this means that the overall impact on GDP growth from the zero COVID strategy can be smaller than what we have seen in the last 2 years. But yes, David, I agree with you. With this zero COVID strategy still in place, we will still probably see continued weakness in consumption for some time.